These are the mannequin heads that the Alcatraz fugitives used to deceive the guards. They escaped through this place, through this small hole. But how did they do it? And most importantly, did they really manage to escape? Welcome to a new episode of Absurd But True. I'm Stefano, and today I want to tell you the true story of the escape from Alcatraz, one of the most incredible and absurd escapes in history. But what exactly happened?
Ciao ragazzi, this video was written and filmed in Italian by our team of scientists, storytellers and video makers, manually translated into English but dubbed with artificial intelligence. Long live culture, and let's go back to the video.
Our story starts here in the US in San Francisco, California. This is Alcatraz prison, the ultimate maximum security prison. Now, before seeing how they escaped, we need to see how this prison was built and what obstacles the prisoners had to overcome in order to successfully escape. The island is about 500 meters long and is located about 2 kilometers from the city of San Francisco. It's almost impossible to escape the island by swimming, as it's surrounded by cold waters and extremely strong currents. This was the main part of the prison, measuring around 130 meters lengthwise. This was the recreation yard used for outdoor time, while this was the dock, the only access point for boats. Then the cells had stronger bars compared to those of other prisons. The cells' walls were made of reinforced concrete, and the entire structure was heavily monitored both inside and outside. The rules were also extremely strict. According to the FBI, the inmates were inspected up to 12 times a day. Interestingly, in Alcatraz, the prisoners could only shower with hot water, but this was not a privilege, as it was used to prevent prisoners from getting used to cold water, and therefore making it harder for them to survive at sea in case of an escape. So, to escape from Alcatraz, it would have been necessary to find a way to leave one's cell, move through the main building, overcome the fence without being seen by the guards, and find a way to reach the coast by crossing the cold waters of the bay. So, you might say, no one has ever tried to escape, right? In fact, during the 29 years of Alcatraz's activity, 35 men tried to escape. Spoiler alert, if you ever find yourself in prison, I would strongly advise against it. 21 were captured, 2 were captured and sentenced to death, 6 were killed during the escape, 2 drowned. And what about the last 4 who were involved in the incident? Well, they are the main characters in our story. The first to play a crucial role was him, Frank Morris, bearing the inmate number AZ-14401. He arrived at Alcatraz in January 60th after leading a quiet life of robberies, drug trafficking, thefts, break-ins, illegal fights, and several escape attempts from other prisons. Quite a colorful character, one may say. The next year, John and Clarence Anglin, 2 brothers arrested for the same crimes as Mr. Morris, were placed just a few cells away. Given their criminal backgrounds, is it possible they knew each other? Indeed, they knew each other. They had become friends, so to speak, a few years before while serving time in Atlanta. Given their history of escape attempts, it didn't take long for them to come up with a crazy scheme to escape Alcatraz. Leading the group was Frank Morris, the smartest of the gang, who would later be portrayed by Clint Eastwood in the Escape from Alcatraz movie. The unlikely trio also recruited a 4th accomplice, Alan West, who had ended up in prison for both robbery and hijacking an airplane. So he's also a calm character. But what was the plan exactly? As we can see in this floor plan, each cell block was separated by these alleys, which were the corridors patrolled by guards, while on the back of each cell were the unguarded service corridors marked here in blue. Access to these corridors was restricted exclusively to guards and maintenance workers, and they usually went unmonitored. The 4 of them would have had to dig a hole in the back wall of their cell to access the service corridor. They would have also had to cover the hole and make sure that the guards did not notice their absence during the escape. From there, they would have had to reach the roof, find their way to the shore, and finally create some sort of raft to reach San Francisco and vanish forever. Quite an ambitious plan, wasn't it? But how did they manage to pull it off? It all starts with a spoon. One says, it is a maximum security prison. How can they possibly... Yes, they were able to dig up a hole in the wall with just a spoon. In fact, despite Alcatraz being theoretically inescapable, the presence of salt water around the prison has caused the accumulation of chlorine and other ions on the concrete structures, weakening the materials over the years. Maintenance was nearly non-existent, so much so that even the steel rebars were deteriorating. Morris and his partners had noticed the terrible conditions of the walls and had stolen spoons from the dining hall to start digging a hole in the walls of their cells. But where did they dig exactly? That is, a hole in a wall is difficult to hide. The four decided to tap around the ventilation duct grill. This would allow them to reach the unguarded service corridor, which was the ideal starting point for an escape, considering that it also provided a route to the prison's roof. The gang started digging with a spoon around the vent, attempting to make a gap large enough for a person to go through. They organized their work in shifts to ensure there was always someone on the lookout for guards. The excavation started around 5:30 p.m. and lasted until 9 p.m. in the evening, perfectly timed with the rehearsals of the penitentiary orchestra. Yes, because the prisoners of Alcatraz not only could play musical instruments, but they also had their own band. However, once the hall was created, they had to find a way to conceal it, and this is where the prisoners' craftsman skills really shone. To create the makeshift cover panel as planned in the escape plan, they used torn magazine pages which they then painted with a set of colors provided to prisoners' interest in art. So at first glance, the fake panel was very similar to the actual wall. They then tried to cover it even further by placing clothes or suitcases in front of it. At this point, you might wonder, what happened to all the material that was dug out? Recall how their escape plan required a way to ensure their absence went unnoticed by the guards? Mission accomplished. They created mannequins starting from cement dust. To do this, they used a mix of soap, toilet paper, and cement powder. Essentially, they repurposed the debris they had created. A form of circular economy, if you will. Okay, shown like this, you can tell they're not actual heads. But imagine them covered by bed sheets, and at night they could easily pass for real ones. The pink color to paint them was taken from the same painting kit we talked about earlier, while the hair was stolen from the barber. By the way, everyone had to make sure to steal the right hair color, so the prisoners had devised a way to conceal the hole, as well as a way to cover their absence during the escape. The only thing left to do was to figure out a way to leave the island. Once again, it was Morris that came out with the brilliant idea. While reading a magazine called Popular Mechanics, he came across an article explaining how to construct a raft utilizing rubber raincoats. In another edition of the same magazine, he had found a tutorial on how to craft life jackets in a similar way. In theory, the magazines were screened by the guards before reaching the prisoners' cells. Who knows why, however, those in charge thought that giving inmates on an island a tutorial on how to build a raft was not risky at all. Well done, congratulations. 10 out of 10. Anyway, after finding this tutorial, the group managed to collect about 50 raincoats. Practically speaking, to create the raft, Morris and his companions had to gather the raincoats, cut them, and stitch the various rubber sheets together. How? They used glue, which could be purchased in the prison shop, as well as the hot water pipes behind their cell to melt the plastic together. The raft, when finished, had dimensions of 1.8 meters by 4.2 meters and was a type of inflatable canoe. But how could they inflate it once outside? With their mouth, perhaps? Well, it would have been nice fun, but time was running out. Fortunately, they managed to recover an accordion like this one. It's a kind of accordion that looks a little bit rounder and was played in the prison band. They were able to modify it and transform it into a type of pump in order to inflate the raft after they arrived at the seashore. If you think about it, the number of items they managed to collect from a maximum security prison is astonishing. During all this time, Morris had continued day after day to loosen the screws securing the fan to the roof. After 6 months of preparation, the escape plan was finally ready to be put into action. It was the 11th of June 1962 at 9:30 p.m. when the lights suddenly went out. Morris grabbed the mannequins and gave them to his partners in crime, who put them under the blankets to deceive the guards. However, there was an unforeseen problem. The panel in West's cell didn't detach from the wall, making it impossible for him to escape. Understanding the situation, the remaining trio pulled a fast one on West, like, well, we tried to get you out, too bad. Ciao! YOLO! So they left without him. Morris and the Anglin brothers climbed the pipes for 9 meters until they reached the fan. They exited on the roof, crossed it, and descended a 15-meter tube on the exterior of the building, making sure to avoid detection. Taking advantage of a blind spot on the guard readers, they climbed another pipe, overcame the barbed wire fence, and managed to reach the island's shore. They lowered the raft, inflated with the accordion, and launched themselves into the sea. No one knows the exact events that unfolded from this point in history. Ah, I nearly forgot. Remember West, the fourth man, the one who was left behind? Well, he would be the one to bring down the master plan. When he reached the roof and realized that no one had waited for him, he had to return to his cell. But in the weeks that followed, he would be the one to inform the FBI about the escape plan. Over the years, many people have wondered whether the trio managed to reach the coast or drowned at sea, but in the end, nothing more was known. Even the FBI, after 17 years of investigations and no sufficient evidence, decided to close the case on December 31st, 1979. What was the verdict? Presumed drowning of the three fugitives. In reality, though, the story was not quite over yet. As a matter of fact, in 2013, the FBI received a letter allegedly written by an elderly John Anglin. Here is what he had to say.
I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962 with my brother Clarence and Frank Morris. I am 83 years old and in a terrible physical condition. I have been diagnosed with cancer. Yes, we were able to make it to our destination that night, but just barely.
Whether it is a real or fake letter, we will never know. Well guys, thank you for following us up to this point. I hope you enjoyed this story and that it provided you some useful insights on what happened on the night of the escape from Alcatraz. We'll see each other here on Geopop, Science in Everyday Life. Ciao!